Well, hello. Welcome to another installment of Old Frisbee buys a bunch of raw meat, and then we get a camera, and then we record it, and then we post it to the ether and hope that people watch it. Otherwise known as Meet and Greet. Welcome back to Meet and Greet. If it's your first time here, welcome. We don't ask anything from you if it's your first rodeo other than for you to have maximum enjoyment for the time in which you watch this video. If it is not your first time here, well, there's nothing else to say. You already know what's going down here. We're trimming brisket. You probably saw it in the thumbnail, title, or description. We're trimming brisket, and I want all you fine gentlemen to drop in the comments if you can and type, "Thank you, Mrs. Meet and Greet." Why? Because I wasn't gonna film this video initially. Initially, I thought there's plenty of how to trim brisket videos, and I just didn't feel like I was adding that much value or anything new. But one, she talked me into it, and two, it did dawn on me that worst case scenario, it's just good barbecue entertainment. Best case scenario, you pick up a half a tip or a quarter of a tip, or God forbid you pick up a tip or two. It's worth it. So here we are, and I'm just gonna jump right into it. We have tools. I will drop the links to all this fine cutlery in the description, but why do I have it? Let's start there. So tomorrow we're smoking brisket. I'm going to endeavor in tomorrow's video to bring the YouTube marketplace one of the most helpful and impactful videos on how to smoke a true craft Texas barbecue brisket. But in order to do that, you gotta trim a brisket right. And really, guys, there's a lot of ways to get this wrong. There's really only one way to get it right. And I'm gonna show you the right way to trim a brisket, and I'm gonna show you my way. And it's my way or the highway. There is no other. No, I'm just kidding. There's a million ways to do this, guys. It's just barbecue. Frankly, you could just take this thing and lob it onto your smoker, pray to the good Lord above, and likely, if you smoke it at 275 and baby it for long enough, it'll turn out okay. So there's no right or wrong, guys. It'll be all right. I'm just showing you my way. So here's a couple things I'm looking at when I'm breaking this down. I break up trimming into really into 6 core parts. And if you successfully check each of the 6 parts, the end result will be a perfectly trimmed brisket. The way that I trim brisket is entirely for the cook, meaning every slice that I do or don't make, I make or don't make 100% based on how I believe it's gonna cook in the smoker. The amount of fat that I remove is contingent on what I think is gonna happen in the smoker. The amount of lean that I take off is contingent on what's gonna happen in the smoker, so on and so forth. The unique thing about trimming brisket is that every cow is different, every brisket is different. It's gonna give you something different every single time. So all you need to learn is the 6 core things that we're looking for, then you take it and you Control C and then Control V. For my old folks, you copy and paste it every single time, and it's good. So let's jump into it. Cutlery. Let's start with this guy. This is an 11-inch Mercer non-serrated. You've probably seen pitmasters trimming brisket with this. There is a reason that they do that, and let's talk about it for a second. There's pros and cons to this. The pro to using this knife is that it has long strokes, it's very sharp, it's very durable, and it holds an edge for a pretty long time. You can churn through a good amount of briskets. Also, because of the long strokes, you get a really nice, clean fat cap. It produces an aesthetic brisket. I mean, all of these can produce an aesthetic brisket because it's not the bow, it's the archer. But this one, when used right, it really allows you to get long strokes that are nice and clean, and it produces a good net result. Those are the pros. The cons, it's not maneuverable, it's not modular, it's hard to wiggle into kind of tricky areas on a brisket. And so if it's your first time, that's a little bit difficult. But yeah, I'll drop the description. If you want to try it, guys, buy any of these knives, try them out, figure out which one you like. I happen to use a combination of all of them, but I'll show you here in a second. Second knife. This is, I believe, an 8-inch Victorinox. I think that's how you say it. If it's not Victorinox, the company, so sorry. Really, I'm not. But it's Victorinox, I think. 8-inch flexi blade. And if you can see this, it bends. That is a bendy knife. Okay, what are the pros? Pro, extremely sharp, like surgical sharp, flexible, maneuverable. This is a really good knife to trim briskets. I know some pitmasters that solely use this knife to trim briskets, and they trim some of the most beautiful briskets I've ever seen. So very sharp, very maneuverable, flexible. You can get into weird scenarios and dig your way out. Cons, it is so sharp that if you dig down too deep into this brisket and you scalp it, it is done. There's no going back. There's no recovering that. You need to be very surgical, very precise with your cuts. Don't get too ahead of yourself. Don't rush it. That is a con. Another con is it doesn't hold a blade for too long. Because of its flexibility and because of how sharp it is, I find myself sharpening this after a few briskets, and it's not that big of a deal, but I don't love that. So again, just letting you know, I'm just filling you guys in. I'm almost done. If you're still hanging with me, it's because you love barbecue. It's because you're a barbecue nerd like me. This guy, 7-inch boning knife made by Mercer, Old Faithful, the true workhorse of Texas barbecue. Everyone knows this knife. This is a mix of both worlds. Pros, durable, sharp, modular. It's curved. You can get into some weird areas. It holds a blade pretty well. Cons, really, I can't think of a con with this knife. This is just a classic knife. And so I would suggest anyone, if this is your first rodeo trimming briskets or you haven't trimmed at least a handful of briskets, start off with this guy, figure out what's going on, then you can pick the other ones up. Hey, but if you don't want to do that and you're like, just give me the big boy, then grab the big boy and have a day. Okay, we got that checked off. Let's jump into trimming the brisket. So 6 core things we're looking at. One, from your vantage point, probably at the camera angle, you can see this is the Mohawk. So we're going to take the Mohawk. Cut 1 in no particular order. When I'm doing it, due to muscle memory, I'll just show you the order that I do it. But in no particular order, so the Mohawk's off. The decal, we're going to remove the decal if it calls for it. I'll explain that in a second. That's cut 2. We're going to slice one of these sides off just ever so slightly, and we're going to straighten the brisket up again. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Slice 4, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Slice 5 is going to be addressing the lean. Most times you're going to get a lean where one side is thinner than the other side. We need to make it aerodynamic. So that's a slice. I think that's 5. And then cut 6 is not really one singular cut, but a process of cuts, and that's the fat cap. Jumping into it, I'll show you exactly how I trim this bad boy, and I promise you, I'll lead you to barbecue success. So I'm going to start by taking this decal off. Let me make this generally quick because our brisket is warming up as we speak, but there's a couple camps when it comes to cutting the decal out. This decal is a large chunk of fat that just will not render when you cook it, so we want to take it out. I take the majority of the decal out, and really where I start is where the decal kind of tapers itself out and it ends. It's different for every brisket, but it ends right about here. And so what I do is I bring the brisket close to me and I take my knife, I lay my knife across. See, I'm using the 11-inch. I lay my knife across, I angle it, and then I just follow up the trajectory of the brisket towards the point. Now, I'll stop right about here and I'll explain why I'm stopping here. So guys, when you're smoking brisket, one of the things you want to do is keep the brisket uniform, aerodynamic, and as flat as possible. This is the point here, this is the lean. On the bottom, the point is higher than the lean, so it's gonna sit at an angle like this, meaning the point's gonna be higher than the lean, and that's because normally there's this big decal underneath. So what I do is as I'm underneath, you see that decal? I'm underneath the decal, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to flatten this brisket out like so, and make it as even as I can. Now this runs even. So when it sits, it's gonna sit as flat as possible. Now the reason why I stopped again, right there, is I wanna show you something. Never take a straight cut and just go straight. Always go down and round. We wanna round this point out. We wanna round this brisket out. So we're gonna cut, and I'm going down now. You see that? And I'm going down and round. So we took this out. That's the decal, not gonna render. will make for good tallow. We'll move that to the side. Because I went down and round, my point now is rounded, like so. I got my section of the point looking perfect, and I'll just make this even. So this guy's sticking out just a little bit, so I'll follow the part that I like. I like this. See, I have my long knife. If I had my shorter boning knife, I'd have to angle myself, but I don't have to do that here because I have my long knife. And I'm just gonna follow this down. See that? The next portion of cuts are going to be the sides, and I'm going to straighten this brisket out. But before I do that, I'll touch on the bottom side because I see a lot of guys spending a lot of time talking about this. No, not to them. I just personally don't think it's that important. So look, the bottom side of the brisket, people say has silver skin, gobs of fat, blah, blah, blah. In my book, this is not silver skin. This is just the surface of the meat, guys. I mean, it's not going to look pristine. This came off of a cow. Silver skin to me is the type of silver skin that sits on top of a beef rib. That's all sinewy, and some of that needs to go. This will render out. The only thing that I'm really worried about is kind of these lumpy fat pockets here. And even still, I'm not super worried, but I will go with the grain with my long guy. It's one of the reasons why I love this knife, because I can get a lot of coverage, and I'm just putting my hand under, giving me a little bit of pop, and I'm just gonna take this out like so. And I don't spend a bunch of time doing this. I'm literally just doing this for the camera so you guys can see just how beautiful this knife works. But if I were just cooking this for the fam, I would just leave this. I'll render and cook all this out. This guy though, this is kind of a bit of a problem. I really do need to take this out. That's too much, and so I'll remove this. Again, round and down because it's big. And I like that. Again, here's where folks will take the decal out. This is separating from the bottom of the brisket. I can pull this decal out if I want to. I won't do it, but I could pull it out if I wanted to. I'm just gonna leave it. I like to leave the decal again, guys, because it protects the meat. It protects this underneath side. It protects this chunk, and I'll actually remove it on the serving block. That's just how I do it. Again, you can do it however you feel comfortable. This edge rounds, which I like. I don't like straight, sharp edges. I like rounding. Because this rounds so evenly, I'm just gonna come where the round becomes straight, where the bend or the curve now goes straight. Think you're on a country back road. You're going around and around and straightens up. Right where it straightens up is where I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna come in just a little bit, like so, and I'm gonna take off this side. Like that. You see my hands here? I'm pushing it out to ensure that I'm getting all of the brisket nice and even. Now, why do we do that cut? Look how much fat this just exposed. If this was there, you'd never see that fat. It's gone now, and when I flip this over, you'll see in a second, I can use this to my advantage when I trim. Also, what it just did is it just evened my brisket out. For the record, you could flip it over. You could also cut that from the top down if you wanted to, which I've done many times as well. Really, there's no right or wrong, whatever you feel comfortable doing. I just did that because we were there and it shows better on the camera. So we got the bottom done. Decal check, side check, bottom fat check. Now let's talk Mohawk. When I say Mohawk, guys, I don't mean this. I don't mean this. I mean this is the Mohawk all the way up. I'm gonna remove this entire thing. Why? Because I want the top of my brisket to be even. I want the bottom to be even. I want this entire brisket to be as uniform as humanly possible. Also, as you probably know, this is gonna burn. This isn't gonna cook. Look at all that fat in there. This just simply needs to come out. Here's the way that I do it. I take my boning knife or your knife of choice, and I'm gonna give myself guidelines. My Mohawk ends somewhere in and around here. I'm gonna find where it ends. I'm gonna grab this fat, squeeze it up, and I'm gonna go down and find where the fat meets the meat. Look how much fat's there. It's still going. I'm right at about 1/4 inch now, and I'm gonna take my knife, my boning, go in towards the lean, and I'm going to follow this all the way down and give myself the first trim. I'm just gonna pull. Look at that pillowy fat. That's the fat we want. That'll render out. Look at that, guys. Now, it's really important what just happened. I cut down here. Now I don't have to guess. Now I know my Mohawk starts here. I want this much fat underneath the Mohawk. So what I'll do is I'm gonna bring my brisket towards me. I'm gonna take my 11-inch Mercer and I'm going to keep it angled down. Guys, do not cut with your knife flush to the brisket. You have to be angled. Point the tip of your knife up. Towards the Mohawk normally gets flatter. The leanest side of the lean is the flattest part of the brisket. So if I were to keep it like this, as I move up, I'm gonna cut into my brisket. So I wanna lean my knife up, and here we go. I'm gonna go aggressive cut. I want this entire Mohawk off. Down and round. Now that is a beautiful piece of meat. Marbling, that Mohawk tells us what's happening in the point. Tons of intermuscular marbling, beautiful piece of meat. I do something special with this. I'll show you guys in another video. Cliffhanger. All right, look what we just did. Now look, guys, our brisket on top is flat. It's totally even. On the bottom's even too. I love the way this is sitting. One more cut on this side and we're almost done. Remember what we did over here? Straight cut. I'm gonna do the same thing on this other side. Now that I can see what I'm doing, I'm gonna press my lean out. I want this brisket to sit as natural as possible. Now, this lean flares out. And again, every brisket's different. I wanna get this straight and uniform. So your inclination might be to try to keep this here. It's too thin. We don't want it. I'm gonna end up cutting it anyways. So I might as well just take it. Again, I'm gonna find the straightest part of my brisket, which is back here on the point, and I'm just gonna come all the way down. As I'm pressing, remember. Gone. If you can see this, look how much fat is there. That is over 1 inch of fat. We do not want or need all of this fat. It needs to go. I find somewhere around the midway point of the brisket, probably closest to the point, somewhere around here where this is really thick. And I'm gonna do on this side what I did on the other side, which is I'm gonna angle my knife up and I'm just gonna start cutting down until I think that I'm about 1/4 of an inch off of the meat or about 1/4 of an inch of fat, which I feel like is right about here. Again, we might not be perfect, but we'll be close. And I'm just gonna turn my knife in towards that, and I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna run this down. And I'm gonna trim this fat right off the top. See? And if you scalp it, it's life. I'd rather scalp it than leave too much fat. And I can tell it's getting thinner right here. It was thicker up here, it's thinner here. So as I'm cutting, I'm not keeping my knife down, I'm keeping my knife tilted up, and I lift my knife higher and higher the closer I get to the lean to try not to scalp it, like this. That is a beautiful piece of fat that we do not need. And again, you can see, I don't know, what is that, 1/2 inch, little under inch, something like that. Honestly, guys, I could render this in my smoker, I know that, but I don't like any sharp edges and this fat comes to a sharp edge. So all I'm gonna do is just come back through and I'm gonna take this edge down just ever so slightly. I'm gonna grab my little fat piece so I can pull it. And then I'm gonna take this down just a little bit. Okay. That side is done. The biggest mistake that I see guys make is you start hacking away at the brisket and you like trim the fat over here and then you trim the fat over here and you trim it up here and then it just becomes a mess. Take it one section at a time. The first trim we want to do when it comes to trimming fat is that thick piece and you want to run it all the way down. Now here's the catch, guys. The middle of this brisket, the fat is so thin, it's actually translucent. There's a purplish blue hue underneath this fat that runs right down the middle. I actually don't want to trim in here. I can actually save myself time and effort by just leaving this. I promise you, this is 1/4 inch of fat or less. This will render just how we like it. I'm gonna leave that there. I won't touch it. I just took this here. I'm gonna leave the rest of that. The only other thing that I need to worry about is the point side of the fat cap. There's a lot of fat here. There's a million ways really you could trim this. I'm just going to take that same cut that I made and I'll just run it the opposite way. And I'm going to try to catch as much fat as I can. You know, I've made the mistake before of not coming in enough with my knife. You know, I start here and I hack away and then I come up and I come up. Over the years, I've just realized, let me just try to take this in one shot. And that's what I'll do again. My knife's not parallel. My knife is faced up. I'm using my hands to lift this and I'm just going to run my knife with my blade angled up, guys. If you go down, you'll scalp it. Once I get enough, I'm going to peel this back and then we'll just start the cut. It's getting tough on me because my brisket's warming up more than I'd like, but that's life. And we're exposing all this pillowy fat is going to render great. I'm just going to come up here and do the same thing. Again, making sure that I don't run too close to this side because the fat's getting lean there. Really all I'm worried about is about this section here. That's all I'm worried about on this brisket. All the professionals say don't cut towards yourself, to which I say, who doesn't cut towards themselves, you know? Come on. Almost done. Now I'm going to squeeze this top portion. There's a lot of fat in here. And I'm just going to do the same thing. You'll notice there's a pattern of squeezing fat and just going in till I find meat. I haven't found meat yet. Go in a little bit more. I haven't found meat. Oh, there's the meat there. Okay, great. So now I can take this, take my knife, turn up, and take that out. And I'll rinse and repeat over here. I just gave myself the angle that I need to be at. So I'm going to take this, making sure to keep my knife up. Oh, good. We scalped. Okay, guys, look. If you put your knife towards the meat side too much, you scalp it. Here's how you recover a scalp. If you don't get anything from this video, get this. I scalped it. People have a tendency to like replace their knife and then like keep cutting. Do not do that. The reason why you don't want to scalp is because this will pool up with fat and we won't set bark there unless we recover the scalp. How do you recover a scalp? Pull the fat back over, press the fat in, and all you're going to do is come up where the scalp starts. The scalp doesn't start here where you see the meat. The scalp actually started about, I don't know, a couple centimeters back. That's really where the scalp started. So put this down, pull your knife out, and you're going to cut away from the scalp, pulling your fat. Who would have thunk? The scalp's disappeared. Now, if I was one of those shysters, I would have just done that and edited it. And you wouldn't have even known I scalped it. But we keep it real around meet and greet. The scalp's disappeared. That fat's going to recongeal. It's gone. You saved yourself a scalp and a peel. Now, I'm just going to touch up my point and then we're almost done. I'm going to show you, I feel like, what everyone likes about briskets, which is that aerodynamic U shape that we all like with a brisket. All I'm doing here is just taking my fat where I think it's too thick. Let's summarize, my brothers in barbecue, and then let's finish this trim out. I'll add this caveat, random thought. If you're liking this content, if you've gotten this far and you're like, hey, this guy's not too boring given he's had the camera at the same angle for 30 minutes, maybe drop me a subscription, that'd mean a lot. But let's just jump right back into this. So we're almost done, let's summarize. We took the Mohawk off, we took the decal off, We cut any lingering fat on the bottom side of the brisket that we just didn't want there. That was done. We straightened this side up. We straightened this side up. We straightened this side up. And then we just got done trimming the fat cap off as much as we deem necessary. Now is when people kind of have different strokes for different folks, if you will. Now, our brisket right now is a perfect rectangle. We have our point, which is rounded, and we want that rounded, and we need to find a way to recreate that same point side round on the lean. We need our lean to round itself out. Why? We've all heard you need a brisket aerodynamic, but I don't really hear people say, well, why do you want it aerodynamic? The biggest issue that I see with briskets that aren't aerodynamic is they leave the lean exposed and too sharp, and then that lean starts to curl up on you. Once a lean curls, that is not good. It's gonna dry out a lot faster than the rest of the brisket once it curls. Also, the curl is gonna create a pool. A pool won't allow your bark to set. The reason we want a brisket aerodynamic is so that the air can wrap itself around, not get caught up, and not curl up our brisket ends. Again, we're thinking with the cook in mind. So how do we do this? I'm gonna show you a way to get that kind of quintessential sexy Texas barbecue trim brisket look. Now, this brisket is actually good. I picked this from Sam's Club, and I picked it this way because I could tell that my lean this is a thick lean. This lean is very thick. Almost even across the board. You're always going to have a lean where one side's thicker than the other. It'll never be perfect. That's brisket. What we want to try to do is get the leanest part of the lean, if that makes sense. We want to try to get it as close to the thickest side of the lean as possible. How do we do that? Well, we just snip off a section of this lean. It's thin down here and thickest down here. So what I'll do is I'll bring my knife parallel to the brisket. I'll come up about an inch or so, and then I'm going to angle my knife again with my knife angled towards the leanest side, and I'm going to cut at this diagonal. I'm preserving the thickest side back here. I'm losing the thinnest side. If this was really thin, I might even come back even further. We don't need to do that. So I'm just going to come back just a little bit, like so. Now, look at how even and thick that is. That's going to cook how we want. And we're going to curve this up simply by doing the following. You could take your knife, and I like to do this if I'm doing one fell swoop. I like to get my bender because it bends itself around. If you do this enough, you know where you want your cuts, and you can literally take your knife and you can just go whoop and bring it around. That doesn't have the highest success rate. If you've not done that a bunch of times, the easiest way to round this out and get that look that we all are after is snip the two sharp ends and then make mini snips. What does that mean? I'll just show you. So we have our sharp end here, our sharp end here. Again, guys, you do not have to guess at this shape. Why? Look at the point. We've trimmed the point how we want it. We just need to bring this cut around. So all we're going to do is snip off this sharp end at an angle. How sharp is the angle, you ask? Just go parallel to the triangle. Create the triangle. Okay? And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. This side though, the only reason we're taking this is just to snip the triangle. This side is so thick and so perfect that we don't want to lose too much of it. So we're just going to take a baby chunk of this triangle. Like that. All we're going to do is start to remove mini triangles, shaping this up like this. So here's a little baby triangle, and I'm pushing, right? I'm flattening this out. I'm always pushing. And I'm not cutting with my knife here. My knife here. Keep your knife parallel. Like so. See? Another triangle here. Pushing, pushing, and I'll probably snip one last triangle. Look at that. It rounds just like our point. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Rinse and repeat. That's it, guys. This is perfectly aerodynamic. It rounds out just enough. The lean is almost perfectly thick. We like this thickness. The brisket is sitting flat from the point all the way down to the lean. If we flip it over, our decal is removed. We removed a little bit of the silver skin and the lingering fat. Towards the point side, we cut that decal deep enough to level that out. This sits completely flush to the cutting board now. That brisket is a trimmed brisket. Now here's my last tip to drive in my point, and it's this: don't second guess yourself. Most mistakes happen when you second guess yourself. The best thing you could do if you're about to second guess yourself, meaning you're thinking, man, I don't know if that fat's too thick there, I would prefer you to go find out. What do I mean? Well, just pick any point of the brisket that you're second guessing. Mostly the second guessing happens when you're trimming the fat cap. Wherever you're second guessing, like, I don't know, I'll just pick a spot. Right here, I'm deliberating. Is there too much fat? Do I need to remove some more? I don't know. Just make a slit, cut into it, and come down and just pry it open. I cut the slit. I'm looking in the slit. I like what I see. Close it back up. That's it. Don't second guess yourself. Just go find out. The last point that I have is literally what I just said, which is do not second guess yourself. Just file away your concern and your mental. Say, you know what? I'm concerned about this section, or I'm concerned about this piece over here. File that away and just see how it cooks. You will find out at the end of the cook. Most times you'll find out if you should have trimmed a little bit more during the cook. Don't second guess. Do one pass, maybe go back and do some minor touch up, and then just get it on the pit. Find out. If you made an error, that's okay. Trim your brisket, serve your friends and family, and file that away for the next time. That's how we learn. If you second guess yourself, you never actually build the proper habits. You just go back and you make a bunch of adjustments, never actually honing in on one specific play. So run the same play every time. This is how you trim a brisket. This is a fail-proof way to trim a brisket, and watch the next video, both dropped in the description and I'm gonna attach it here. And that, my friends, that link is how you smoke the best brisket you will ever make in your entire life. My friends, as always, it's an honor, it's a pleasure to serve you. Meet and greet, Big Frizz, over and out.